Hello and welcome to the National Defense Industrial Association's Georgia chapter's very first video podcast featuring the 21st Century Partnership. I'm DJ Hathaway, president of Hathaway Tactical Solutions, but for today, I'm representing the Georgia chapter of the NDIA. Our sponsor for today's podcast is Mobile Pocket Office. You can be found at mobilepocketoffice.com. Be human where it counts, otherwise automate. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Dan Rhodes of the 21st Century Partnership. Dan is the Chief Operating Officer of this nonprofit organization, which has as its mission to enhance the military value of Robins Air Force Base in Middle Georgia. Dan also serves as the president of the NDIA-Georgia chapter and is a retired Naval Intelligence Officer. It is a pleasure to speak with you today, Dan. Welcome aboard.
Good to speak with you as well. Look forward to this.
Now, very interested in 21st century partnerships, Dan. I know you and I have known each other for quite a while here, but can you tell us how you became involved with the 21st Century Partnership?
Sure. About 3 years ago, 21st Century Partnership was transitioning in where they were going. Up to that point, they had been focusing primarily on base realignment and closure activities. So kind of looking backwards. And what we recognized pretty early on, the CEO currently is Chrissy Miner, and the two of us recognized that that was not the way things were going to be in the future. And in fact, what was happening to a lot of our bases is that they were getting what they call a death by a thousand cuts. So slowly but surely missions were being pared away at bases. And in some cases, it left very little mission at bases, and that leaves a base viable or inviable for missions in the future, and could potentially lead to a BRAC action in the future. So one of the things that we want to do, and we wanted to do coming into it, is we play both offense and defense. So the defense part of that is ensuring that the base is never going to be on a BRAC list, making sure that the community is prepared and that we have all the resources in the community available to ensure that we compete well in a BRAC in the future. The offensive part of that is ensuring that we're preparing for the future in the types of workforce that we need, the types of capabilities, and where we need to focus our energies as a community. One of the things that we do at the partnership is we speak both community and base. So we're kind of the intermediary between the base and community, and ensure that both of those groups understand what the other needs to be able to get the mission done.
Oh, that's great. And so what are the impacts that you've seen and some of the achievements that 21st has had in defending Robins Air Force Base? I know I've only been here a little over 3 years, but have been very impressed how supportive the community seems to me, to the first responder community, but also the base. And I imagine you had a big play in some of that.
Absolutely. We absolutely are appreciative of Middle Georgia. Matter of fact, if you go to downtown Warner Robins, and this is throughout Middle Georgia, they have cut into the hedges. Every day in Middle Georgia is Armed Forces Appreciation Day. They have just the initials, but still you get the picture. It's also painted on the water tower in town. But not only is it the motto of the city and of the community, we also play it every day. And in fact, in 2019, Middle Georgia was selected as a Great American Defense Community. And that was one of the things that we worked to try and bring about. That designation comes from the Association of Defense Communities. So all the communities that support defense bases throughout the United States. And we got that designation from them last year and been able to parlay that and continue to show how our community is so supportive of Robins Air Force Base. Additionally, another great example of how the community pulls together to support Robins. Last year, the base made an announcement that they needed 1,200 positions filled, 1,200 new people to get hired out at Robins Air Force Base, and they wanted it within 12 months. Well, in fact, not only did we meet the 12-month criteria, we got it done in 9. The partnership was able to help with bringing a website online that helped them get that done. And we work with them to be able to streamline their processes so that they could get those 1,200 people on in record time. And in fact, it was so successful of a program, both Hill and Tinker have taken that program and applied it in their own communities. So that's just a couple of examples. Don't want to go into too many nitty-gritty details. I will say that from a legislative perspective, one of our focuses is to ensure that we're educating our legislators, both at the state and federal levels, on the things that are needed at Robins Air Force Base and the things needed in the community to be able to support those efforts. So things like the Defense Community Infrastructure Program, DCIP, which is a federal program, and we have been advocating for additional dollars to be put into that in federal legislative bills so that communities can take advantage of it. Communities like Middle Georgia can take advantage of those dollars to be able to support their infrastructure needs in the community in support of our military forces. Another great example of that is the recent passage of, let me look that one up, of House Bill, and this is at the state level, of House Bill, oh darn it. Luckily, he can edit all this stuff out. Sorry, I gave you your first edit point.
No worries, guys. You're doing great. Okay.
Where the heck did House Bill go?
This is a safe environment. You get to practice. Amazing what happens on the editing floor.
Can't look like Brad Pitt.
No, I'm more like a mule. Snip, snip. I don't have track.
House Bill numbers are irrelevant anyway. From a state legislative perspective, we've also been working with our state legislators to educate them on the needs of our military forces on base. And in fact, just this last year, they passed a bill, even within the COVID recess and the very tight timelines they had afterwards. Both House or both chambers of the Assembly were able to come together and pass a bill that supports military spouses and their ability to be able to get their license very quickly once they move to this state. As you would imagine, military members move much more than their civilian counterparts. In fact, it's about 10 times more. And so their spouses oftentimes are unable or very limited in their ability to be able to build their own career paths and build their own successes. So having the ability in the state so that a spouse that comes to Georgia can immediately get her license and start practicing her career path or his career path really is a benefit to that military member and to that military spouse. So that was an amazing thing that our local delegation pushed and we're able to get through to the goal line. Now that's waiting to go on to the governor's desk, but anticipate that'll get signed shortly.
Hey, Dan, so I've lived on a couple of bases and been assigned around bases for a long time in my career, but I've never run across anything quite like 20th Century Partnership. Is that unique to here? I mean, if we were to go to Columbus with the Army bases, are there similar nonprofits doing the same sort of thing, or is this really unique to the Robins area?
Throughout the state of Georgia, there are several organizations that are very similar to us. Not all military base has an organization like ours in the state of Georgia, but several do. Savannah has one. There's one down in South Georgia that supports the Navy base out there. The chamber kind of does it over in Fort Benning. However, in the state of Georgia, all of those defense communities tend to work together through the Georgia Chamber of Commerce to try and make sure that we're all talking the same things when we're talking to our state legislative folks. When you're looking in other states, depending on the number of bases that they have different levels of support. So for instance, Utah, one primary base and guard bases they have a state organization that takes care of their bases. If you look at the state of Texas, that is led out of the governor's office. And there is a person that reports directly to the governor in supporting all the military bases throughout the state. So each state's variable on how they provide support, but what I have discovered is the vast majority of the states do provide some sort of intermediary between the base and their local communities.
Great, Dan. So what do you think, to change gears a little bit, we're now in a COVID-19 environment. We see a lot of civil unrest, not so much around the Warner Robins area, but it's probably coming sooner rather than later. But what do you see are the upcoming challenges for Robins Air Force Base, and how do you think you, Middle Georgia businesses, and the community can help?
So the Defense Industrial Base has been impacted rather dramatically throughout the COVID crisis. For one thing, a lot of their folks, their employees, there are concerns about coming to the workplace, which means that a lot of the lead times in their contracts have been impacted in the ability to be able to meet contract requirements. Department of Defense has been working very closely, and NDIA, by the way, have been working very closely with Ms. Ellen Lord at the DoD level to try and ensure that they understand what those impacts are to our defense industrial base and how they can mitigate it. Some of the results from that is that payment authorizations were coming early on some of the contracts that are out there, and they've been working to try and make sure that it's not necessarily, while the primes, the big businesses have been impacted quite a bit. They're also concerned with our smaller mom and pops, all the way down to the smallest organizations have been impacted as well. So you're talking second, third tier suppliers. So that is one of the concerns that we have certainly been watching. And there's another bill that's going to be coming out from the federal side in the next couple of days. We're hoping probably end up coming in next week would be my guess, based on Senate, what the Senate is forecasting. That is going to not only address COVID across the nation, but add another $17 billion to the defense industrial base to try and support them. So we'll be certainly watching that, and we'll see how that is going to impact the military and the defense industrial side going into the future. Other things that are going to impact both Robins Air Force Base and all of our businesses in the future, two things. One is CMMC, which is the cyber maturization process that DoD is mandating, so that not only the primes, but the subs as well, ensure that they have a cyber hardened capability to protect the types of things that they're producing from prying eyes, especially from bad actors like China and Russia, who are trying to get the technology that we're producing in the United States. Another one is going to be the advance of technology in the future. So in the past, we have done a very good job in producing technology, but not very quickly. And I'm talking Department of Defense. And it's become the fact that all of technology leads are coming in from the civilian side of the world, as opposed to where it used to be in the 1960s and 1950s, technology was being led by the military. It's not the case anymore. It's the civilian sector. And in fact, it is so quickly advancing that the military has been unable to keep up. So one of the things that we're working towards in the partnership is ensuring that we have the workforce available, starting K through 12 and working through the school years into college and out the other side, building new businesses, building entrepreneurship, and trying to develop new capabilities in the workforce so that they're prepared to be able to advance those new technologies, whatever comes down the pike. It's very fascinating. That's a piece that I really love to look at. If you think about it, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would not have thought that you could have all of the world's libraries in your pocket. You can today. You would not have thought that you would hop in your automobile and it could drive you from point A to point B. That happens today. You would not have thought that your refrigerator could be connected to the internet. That happens today. So it is amazing how fast technology has advanced and will continue to advance in the future.
Yeah, no, that's interesting how things have evolved and changed, which kind of brings me to another question. So the last question was really about what were the challenges that the Air Force is facing, you know, those sorts of things. But now if you flip that around, although there's lots of advances in things, we know the bureaucracy and processes still of acquisition and things like that have not necessarily kept up. So, you know, as the COO of 21st Century and as the president of NDIA-Georgia, what are the challenges for business? What do they face when trying to deal with the Air Force? You know, where there's not necessarily streamlined process. I know there's a lot of attention trying to streamline those processes, but what are the sticky points and obstacles for business dealing with the base?
I think you said it fairly well. As a bureaucracy that's in place and trying to get through that to figure out how they can get to those contracts. How can they introduce their innovation to the Air Force, especially if you're an innovative company that is able to demonstrate capabilities that the Air Force currently doesn't have in place. And this goes with all DoD, to be perfectly honest. How do you get that to them? DoD has recognized that, and in fact, that's why now the Air Force has what they call AFWorks. SOFWorks was the first one, so the Special Forces Group was the first one to recognize this and realize that that's a good way to get to our industry. You have different acquisition models called like SBIR and SBBR, where you're able to get into the acquisition process very quickly. And sometimes if you're able to demonstrate a capability, they'll put you on contract right away at some of the pitch events that AFWorks has had. All of the services are getting on board with that and trying to build in innovation to get into the technology cycle, which is very fast. If you look at the F-35, that took an amazing number of years to be able to just get to the point to where they're actually putting it in combat. And in fact, they're already starting a new modernization effort on the F-35, one of our newest jets. So what that tells us is it's taking too long to get the weapon systems we need to fight the enemy. So how can businesses, to directly answer your question, how can businesses get engaged with that? Go look at AFWorks website, go look at SOFWorks website, the Navy and Army's version of it, and see if you can solve any of those challenges. Get on to those programs and directly benefit from what's in place.
Outstanding, Dan. No, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Just to kind of wrap up, and hopefully we'll have you back on again some other time, Dan.
Indeed.
I know you're a wealth of knowledge for here. I'd also like to thank our sponsor again, Mobile Pocket Office, mobilepocketoffice.com. If you, and we'd invite any other company out there that would like to sponsor an edition or segment of these podcasts, please contact Mr. Dan Rhodes at drodes@robbins21.org. If you're interested in sponsoring a future podcast or interested in having a speaker that we could get on board here to speak to something you're interested in. Also, I'd ask you please visit the NDIA-Georgia website at www.ndia-georgia.org or find us on LinkedIn. Till the next time, thanks for watching.
Thank you for having me on.